ultimately, I think the reason why you want to have kids early is because you want to not steal your time from your children and your grandchildren away from them. It's just like inflation. You're stealing basically from the next generation.
Welcome to the Rich Dawn, where eternal beatitude begins in this life. I'm Kyle Dean, and today I have with me Alex Field, a young adult convert to the Catholic faith, a member of Young Adult Ministry, and particularly the Dynamis Ministry here in the Western New York region. Alex, how are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
No doubt, man. What is new? What is on your heart?
Well, I recently converted this year, actually, to the faith after a long time Protestant. I actually was a little atheist in high school, but we'll get into that.
Totally. Kindred spirits there.
Yeah.
And so my understanding is it was kind of like mainline, non-denominational.
Yeah, it was non-denominational. There was a little bit of Methodist involved, pastors involved, but yeah, just general non-denominational Protestantism.
Sure. And obviously, you've been a part of the Dynamis Ministry. I've gotten to know you over these times, and shout out to our boy Jack. He good friend of Alex's, and he brought Alex into the ministry, and that's what it's all about. It's just community building, and we missed you at the American Ninja Warrior. But
unfortunately,
I'm
yes.
Throw it up there for the guys. That's something that we do from time to time, getting out in the community with the ministry. And you came in right as we were doing that.
Yeah. I came in a week after that, actually.
And you had just received all of your sacraments of initiation this Easter.
Yeah, I received baptism, confirmation, and first Eucharist all on Easter Vigil.
Wow.
All at the same time within an hour of each other.
So let's just get right into it. What was it like growing up, Christian? What, you mentioned there's an atheist turn.
Yeah.
And then what was the moment where you were like, I got to do RCIA?
Yeah, so I grew up generally Protestant, like I said, all throughout my life. Grew up Protestant. It was a fairly good, I don't want to say catechesis because that's more Catholic, but there was a fairly good amount of explaining that happened, and all the questions that I had were answered as a kid. And then I grew up, obviously, went to school, and then right about like ninth grade, high school time, I became an atheist, basically. And it's not that I didn't believe in God, because really, if saying I don't believe in God, it kind of is in itself a belief, because you're like, yeah, you and a friend, you say, I like this sandwich, but your friend says, I believe another sandwich is better. That's still in itself a belief. So it was a lot of family misfortune, a lot of deaths in the family. So really I was just angry at God. Yeah. I was really angry at God, basically. It really happened with the death of my grandfather. He had cancer, unfortunately. God
rest his soul.
Yeah. He beat it. And then about half a year to 8 months later, it came back. And we were praying that whole time, but it really, once he passed away, it really defeated me a lot. So I was just angry at God. And that's really, when it boils down to, that's just kind of what atheism is. A lot of the time, people are just mad at God for whatever he's done in your life to try to make you a better person, make you holy, which is ultimately what I came to understand. So I was basically atheist throughout my entire high school, so for 3.5-ish years, maybe 4.
Sure.
And then Jack, obviously, we were in a weight room, in the weight room in my school. It was like a pre-sports season, just kickoff in the fall.
Right.
And because I did nothing in the fall, I did a winter and a spring sport. So we got to talking, and I had just recently come back to Christianity, I guess, and I started going back to church with my mother and really started praying, and ultimately I thought, what is important? And it really came down to Protestantism can't just be it. There has to be something more. So when I started talking to my friend Jack, every question that he had an answer for, and it didn't seem like he was lying to me.
Right.
It didn't seem like he had anything to gain, like you'd see in a lot of Protestant, denominations where they're trying to sell you something.
Or
and
in Catholic circles, it's
yeah.
let's just win a soul. Let's, I checked the box. I converted someone to Christ. It's like treating someone like closing a sale or something, which never works.
Yeah, and he actually reverted at that time. He had gotten confirmed a year before. This was about my junior year, and he actually reverted the year before, or a little while earlier. I think like 8 months or so earlier, and he got confirmed, and he went on this whole big like crusade. Basically, he brought. I was the 7th or 8th person that he had either introduced to the faith or had basically converted. 6 people, I think, were in our CIA and got baptized that year.
What a G!
Yeah. Yeah, he went on a whole crusade and he killed.
Without even trying, it sounds like.
No, he killed it
himself.
Yeah, he converted, I think, 2 Muslims, 1 atheist, and 2 Mormons, and then I think one other just general, I think, Protestant. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Get this dude to the Holy Land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. So that was in high school you made the connection with Jack, good friend, and that's how it started, just by being a friend. You were searching. I guess I want to ask real quickly, what was it about Protestantism at the time where you were like, this isn't enough, there must be more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my general idea. And a lot of the, like, in general Protestantism, for people who haven't grown up in Protestantism, it really is just like, oh, well, pray to God, and God's mysterious. He works in mysterious ways. He doesn't, you just got to pray about it, and then you think, and then maybe it happens, maybe you learn. If not, God is mysterious. So that's like the general idea a lot of the time in Protestantism, unfortunately. So a lot of the,
maybe more rational connections.
Yeah, like things like praying to Mary, or like where does the Pope fit in? Which is a big thing. That was actually one of the things that was really stuck with me, was the Pope and the idea of papal infallibility. I listened to a song that talked about the Pope, and it was about the Swiss Guard that died for the Pope, defending him when Rome got sacked.
Wow, what song is that?
It was called "The Last Stand," I think, by Sabaton.
Awesome.
So yeah, I was on a big Sabaton kick, because they do like historical songs and stuff, and I came across this song and I said, huh. And in the bridge, it goes something along the lines of dying for salvation with dedication, no capitulation, annihilation, papal commendation, reincarnation, heaven is your destination.
Whoa.
So
resurrection, not reincarnation, but other than that,
solid. Yeah. And I was like, I've heard of the Pope. Well, so what's his deal? So I started looking in it, and it's basically the idea of like, the Pope, he is Christ's representative on earth, and I never heard that before. And it's like, when it comes to when papal infallibility is met, those 3 conditions, it's like whatever he says goes. So that wasn't something like, and that was the problem with me at that point, because you know how teenagers get a little angsty and really little rebellious. So when I had read that, and it's like Christ gave the Pope authority over matters of morals and Christianity. Right. Ultimately, I was like, well, if God says it, then it's got to be true. So.
Wow. So there's almost a simplicity to your faith evolution, if I may, because you already had the seeds of faith there, but you were just like, hey, God said it, I'm good. They say the way into heaven is through the mind of a child, and it's like a lot of people complicate things, or they overcomplicate things, and then you get all kinds of muddied, signals and whatever else, but. So that's awesome. And you're hanging out with Jack. He's giving you these answers, and then he got you into RCIA.
Yeah, ultimately the thing was him talking about the Eucharist. Actually, it was I'd never heard about the Eucharist. And he said it's Jesus fully present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist, and I'd never heard that before.
Wow.
And for some reason, at the time I had no idea what it was, but now I know it was the Holy Spirit. That right. Like it definitely was like. Something resonated within me. It was like, this is the truth. Like, and if it's not, ultimately, unfortunately, we Catholics, we would be like the worst idolaters. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, it's not the case. It is him, and I do believe that it is him fully present there. Now,
it's kind of like how St. Paul said that if the resurrection didn't happen, our faith is worthless.
Yeah,
but because it happened, it is the fullness of the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, it is reality. Yeah, same thing with the Eucharist, absolutely. And so you learned about the Eucharist from Jack or at RCIA?
From Jack, yeah, okay. From Jack.
And now you're in RCIA. What was that like for you?
It was a little, because it was in that like revamping COVID year, and it was really tough at first, because obviously nobody gives like catechumens credit. It really is difficult. Like if you were born, like if you were a cradle Catholic and you were born in the faith, it really is like something entirely different to convert. People don't like to talk about that, or people don't emphasize that part of it as much,
No,
but it is difficult. It is definitely difficult, and it took me like around 2 years. Like I really started taking it serious after a year. This last December, I really considered myself Catholic at that point, and that's when I really started taking it serious. But yeah, I started going to RCIA and learning. It got way better because more and more people had started. A lot of people had moved into the area in the community, so there was a lot of people my age, which actually helped quite a bit.
Yeah, totally. Did they ever do like exorcisms over you in preparation for the?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because especially for people who are never even baptized and they come into RCIA, I mean, it's sad for me to hear you say like people don't give it credit because this stuff is intense. I mean, if you actually know your history, you've got the 7 orders that developed from I think the hundreds, 200s at the latest. We have written documentation that these orders exist. It goes from, you get tonsure, and then you go, porter, lector, exorcist, acolyte, subdeacon, deacon, priest, and that exorcism power that is given as you ascend those steps of the ladder becomes particularly important, not just for exorcism ministry, which, the sacrament of confession is worth 100 exorcisms. A lot of people get that misunderstood too. But also when you're involved in being initiated into Christianity, particularly again, if you haven't been baptized already, so it's a little different for Protestant if you came in as a Protestant, but exorcisms get performed like you're under the dominion of Satan, and RCIA should be taken super seriously because there's a lot of really intense stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Period.
Thankfully, my catechesis was pretty serious. It was joyful and everything because it's like, oh, and somebody's new and somebody's coming, and that was actually very helpful for me because I was going to the mass where a lot of the older people were going. It was morning mass, so it was a lot of older ladies. Actually, I'm thankful for them. They really encouraged me, and they really made me feel welcome there, and that was really important because I know of stories where people don't feel welcome and then they ultimately shy away from the faith, which is unfortunate. But
totally. So all right, so you get through RCIA. What was it like?
It was
making it to Easter?
It was a lot because that last summer, that summer, I really started to fall away because I was just graduated. You know how things go, and I was really just on like a kick to just go be an adult and go do things.
Find yourself, explore life.
Yeah, and then it ultimately the same thing happened again where I was like, well,
unfulfilled.
All the things that I had ever done in my life had really come down on me, and really started to weigh down on me again. And I was like, okay, well, I really need to do this. And ultimately on Easter, when I got baptized and confirmed,
of this year,
yeah, I've been officially Catholic for like 8 months now.
Yes, welcome to the fold.
Yep. And it's weird because the day after the Easter Sunday and that whole month, I felt like a kid again. Honestly, I felt like I was 3 years old again, just having fun, and it was like euphoric almost. Like I felt, I don't want to say perfect, but I felt basically perfect, getting all those sacraments so close together, all 3, boom, 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 within an hour, and then having Eucharist again the next day, communion on Easter Sunday.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
Praise God, man. A lot of people get discouraged sometimes or disappointed even because they think confirmation or some of these different sacraments you're gonna like feel something. Some people do, but a lot of times you don't. I mean, we're talking about invisible realities taking place in the soul at the end of the day. So, the soul and the body are 2 different things. You're not necessarily going to have a bodily connection to it. And people need to realize that that's, it's not about feelings at the end of the day. But it sounds like you had, an awareness that, I am made new.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds weird, I guess, to some people, but I really did feel clean. Like in a way, I felt pure and clean, and that was a one time or in my adult life that I felt genuine joy, like actual complete and perfect happiness at that Easter Sunday. It was beautiful.
God, man. Praise God. Well, thank you for your witness. And it inspires all of us in the ministry, right? I mean, very soon after that, I think that says a lot to your character. You were like, okay, I'm in the faith now. I got here for a reason. I knew there must be more in life. I want to figure out what that is, and then I want to fall in line accordingly, right? I want to live in it. Okay, the Pope is the head of Christ on earth.
What he says
Let's
goes.
go. Right? Like,
Yeah.
And then you wanted to continue to go deeper. And obviously you ended up finding our ministry through Jack.
Yeah. After I got baptized too, I started telling everybody. I was like, Catholic, be Catholic. You got to be Catholic. And I had some very, like, with some of my friends and family members, it was really like we started to headbutt. And it was, and then all the common questions. It really is just misconceptions. Like that was what shied me away at first. It was just a lot of misconceptions. And then during my catechesis, I really started to learn. I was like, okay, well that's why that is, and that's why this is, and so on and so forth. So
right, our faith is really rational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the challenges, depending on the flavor of Protestantism, but you know, non-Catholic Christianity is that. Sometimes you get this idea that faith is believing without seeing, and that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely like, you know, faith is faith. You have to believe something. But in Catholic, you know, understanding, you know, it's a very rational endeavor. You know, like faith is there's like a science to it. There's systematic, you know, connection between the virtues of faith, hope, and charity. You know, Martin Luther really kind of, you know, the father of Protestantism, really kind of disintegrated that in his understanding. But, you know, faith is connected to the intellect, and hope and charity are connected to the will. Intellect and will are soul faculties. So, you know, that's why, you know, St. Anselm says it's like theology is, you know, faith seeking understanding, fides clarens intellectum. And I don't know, you know, we're not here to speak about Jack's life, but, you know, somehow, some way, he really got a lot of that. It sounds like apologetics, where he has the answers. He knows that they're there. Yeah, they are out there.
Yeah, he had every question I had for him, he had an answer to. Like when I asked him, I was like,
Impressive.
"Well, what about Mary? Like, why do you guys pray to Mary?" And he's like, "Well, we pray to Mary, because she can intercede on our behalf." Talk to Jesus right there. It's like he said it's like Jesus talking to God the Father. He said it's exactly like that. And he said she is, out of everybody in heaven, she, besides Jesus, obviously, who's God, she's the most powerful. She's more powerful than everybody else put together, and it's not even come close. It doesn't even come close.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Amen. That's right. And okay, so you wanted to go deeper and deeper. You ended up in our ministry. You know, what's the number one thing that you'd say that you've learned, just off the top of your head?
Oh gosh, that there's 9 levels of prayer. I didn't know that there was 9 levels of prayer. I thought it, obviously coming from a Protestant, it's just like, oh well, it's about you and a personal relationship with Jesus. When I became Catholic, that kind of changed.
Right, prayer might work, it might not.
Yeah,
it's a mystery. Versus, hey, talk about systematic.
Like, yeah, there's once you go through one, that's the only way to get to the next.
Right.
So
yeah, and level 2 mental prayer is the doorway to the upper 7 levels of prayer. Obviously, you know this podcast. I feel so weird using the word podcast, and I'm really not, you know, partial to the word show, because this is real life. We're just, you know, two souls in Western New York having a real conversation. But you know, I the subtitle, if you will, I always say is, you know, where eternal beatitude begins in this life, and it's because, you know, that's kind of what I bring to the table, is that spiritual theology perspective. And that's where you're going to get your 9 levels of prayer, the 7 heavenly virtues, 4 moral, 3 theological, right? 3 kinds of grace, you know, your sanctifying grace, actual grace, and gratuitous grace. How does that work? And ultimately ascending those 9 levels of prayer by growing in the virtues, rooting out the vices, cooperating with grace. You know, like that's, and eternal beatitude begins in this life. If you can attain the 9th level of prayer in this life, which, by the way, is what every soul on earth is supposed to be doing. Yeah.
I'm glad that, because I'm a very naturally curious person. I like finding out things. I like knowledge, which can be dangerous sometimes, but it's like the child in me. Like every time I try to learn something, it reminds me of when I was a kid again, a lot of the time.
The more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm glad to have met somebody like you, because you have a lot of background in this sort of thing, and you have a lot of knowledge that I can draw upon, and that's why ultimately I'm glad that we have this great group here, where I can bounce ideas off of people and talk and communicate with them if I don't know anything.
And it is a great group, you know. Thank you for those kind words. And I want to get out of the way and let God be glorified, and really shed a light on all of those, you know, men and women that are a part of this ministry. I mean, we've been going strong for the better part of a decade now, and There's a plethora of knowledge and seeking that understanding and wisdom and all the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which you of course received on Easter. And it's kind of like a childlike metaphor, but I've been to I've helped out with some confirmation classes at the seminary back when it was open, and one of the things I've heard explained to the kids, it just kind of helps them understand it. Young high schoolers, it's like you got milk, you got a cup of milk, and then confirmation, you got your chocolate to put in the syrup to put in the milk. The gifts are there. The gifts are there with you for the rest of your life, but it's up to you to stir it up.
Yeah.
So that the gifts are operative.
It's up to you to put it in motion.
100%.
That was something that also brought me to faith, because it was like, if God came here, if Jesus really is who he says he is, and he tells us to do something, then why wouldn't we do it? It reminds me of faith without works is dead. And that was ultimately...
James chapter 2.
Yeah, that's something that ultimately... Because works are like a weird thing in Protestantism, where they're like, well, you're saved by grace alone. It's like, well, yes, but your works, or faith, excuse me, you're saved by faith alone.
Right. Sola fide.
And your works are an example of your faith. I ultimately came to realize, it's like, well, where do works fit in? It's like, well, works are, if you have faith, you will go out and do what Jesus told you to do, and just ultimately preach the gospel. So.
Yes. You know what I like to say sometimes? It's like, you always see John 3:16 out there. John 3:16. So God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? And that's huge in Protestantism, because then it says, for whosoever shall believe in him will be saved. And I always like to throw in, as I was raised up in the tech industry, it's like, that's a zipped folder. That verse. You want
to poke and prod in there? There's a little bit more in there.
Yeah, unpack that for a second. Whosoever shall believe in him will be saved. Believe in him means all the precepts that he laid out.
Yeah, if you believe in something, that means you're going to do what you can to fulfill it, whether it's a goal or if it's somebody, then you're going to do what they tell you to do.
Right.
So
yeah, it's not just a passive belief. It's like actively, do this, don't do that, right? Be ye perfect, even as my Father in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5:48. Whoa, how does that work? Oh, by the way, it's the 9 levels of prayer. Get to the 9th level.
Yep.
Moral perfection. Boom. But it's only by grace. Levels 5 through 9, only by grace. You dispose yourself to it. So that's where, we agree with Protestants that it's only by grace. That's how it works. Like Galatians 6, St. Paul gets into that a lot, where, it's only by cooperating with the grace, but you still have to put the effort in. That's where the works come in, right? So, well, anyways, thank you for helping me to know, like, where your mind and heart is at, and how you want to go deeper, because we're going to continue to do that in the life of our ministry. But moving on from that, I mean, so one thing I happen to know about you is, that you're partial to the traditional Latin Mass.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like it, and I like parts about Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass.
Yeah.
And some people, I think, go a little bit too far. Obviously.
One way or the other.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. A lot of people, unfortunately, go one way or the other, where they swing and they're like, oh, traditional, it's the only way you can do it. If Novus Ordo isn't valid. Sorry, but that's heretical. And people go on the other side. It's like, well, get with the times. Like, Latin Mass, you can't do that anymore. It's like, well, that's also heretical. It's like
schismatic.
Yeah, schismatic. And honestly, it's not up to me, obviously, 100%. But if it were, and what I think should happen, I think there should be a merger of the two in some way, because I like parts of both, and I dislike parts of both. I like the active participation in Novus Ordo a lot. That was something that actually brought me closer to the faith and really helped me understand. And then now that I've been going to the Latin Mass as much as I can, I really like the time for prayer that you have, and self-reflection that I can do, whatever I've done throughout the week,
right.
And really just try to give it to God ultimately, and have him just take care of it, and try to just surrender myself to him. And it's something that is very nice, that I feel like helps people in their journey, because I feel like most people, or everybody, should at least try to go to the Latin Mass once in their life, just to understand it. But that's my opinion on it.
Okay,
obviously.
So I was going to say, what would be like the newly converted into the faith, like, solution to this problem? It sounds like yours is like the merger.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with me on that too, because people just fight over it, and ultimately, as Catholics, we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should settle our differences and try to solve the world's problems through Catholicism, because I think the problems that everybody has, all the problems in the world, is just a lack of Catholicism at the end of the day.
Totally. Yeah, it's a lack of communication, it's a lack of understanding, and it's a lack of, trying to understand sometimes, right? Which is a lack of charity.
Yeah.
And that's where schism comes in. Schism is the cutting off of unity. Think scissors, like boom, charity's out the window. It's actually worse than heresy. St. Jerome, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas talk about how heresy and schism are peas in a pod. You can't get one without the other. I mean, one is will come first, but the other will come immediately right after it, because false belief leads to a lack of unity. Lack of unity leads to false belief, but schism's actually worse, because heresy is a degradation, a destruction rather, of the theological virtue of faith, whereas schism's a destruction of the theological virtue of charity. Serious stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm partial to the Latin Mass, and that's something that I've learned in my young adult journey in my mid-20s, and I learned so much about it. I mean, that is the Mass of the ages. The vast majority of all saints that came up in the West, throughout our history, were formed by some form of that. Right, obviously with St. Pius V in the 1500s, it was really codified, but it was an organic progression even before that. Really going back to St. Gregory the Great, and many say that it even goes back to St. Peter himself in some way, shape, or form. So I don't agree with the people that say, "Oh, we need to get rid of the Latin Mass."
Yeah, you really can't actually, you can't get, because it's what every other Mass is based on. If you really look into it, if you read Church Fathers, it really is the original Mass, and
in the West.
Yeah, especially in the West. Yeah,
in the East, there's different Masses that were organically formed by either one of the apostles or one of the early Church Fathers, and there's 23 of them in the East now. But in the West, you're right. It's the OG, man. It's the OG, and then Novus Ordo, came out of it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. A lot of people like to rag on it. It's like, well, sorry, you can't. It's a valid Mass. If you disagree with that, sorry, you need to rethink.
It's contentious.
Yeah.
It's contentious because there obviously has been a ton of confusion. One way to think about it is, the Vatican II Council happened, 1962 to 1965. The Novus Ordo was promulgated, I think it was December 8th, 1969. And at that point, the Latin Mass was kind of like, they were trying to abrogate it. And at one point, there was only one Latin Mass offering available in the entire world, which was in a seminary in Econ, Switzerland.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of convergence around that fact of world history to where, the Latin Mass survived. And then it continued to be available. Pope John Paul II introduced indults, and I believe it was 1984. And and then Summorum Pontificum came out in 2007 under Pope Benedict XVI, where he said the Latin Mass can be celebrated by any priest on planet Earth. You don't even need your bishop's permission, because Benedict was really, in succession after John Paul II, they were really trying to wrestle with, okay, the Second Vatican Council came out, and people are trying to come to grips with this new expression. They didn't, really define any new dogmas or doctrines. They just wanted to.
It was just more of like an expansion, yeah.
They wanted to pastorally express what the church teaches in modern language, and that's great. When you get things out of there like, universal call to holiness without actually unpacking what that means, and more lay participation now, which I think is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you see that in the Novus Ordo now. In other words, don't let the Protestants be the ones that read their Bibles. There used to be a thing before Vatican II where, that's a Protestant thing. And that's wrong. You're supposed to be steeped in the Word. In fact, in order to reach the mystical levels of prayer, which is, 5 and upward, you have to be steeped in the Word constantly, especially prayer of quiet and above. But that's all neither here nor there. The point I'm getting at is that when you couple, all right, we're going to open up the windows of the church to the world and more lay participation, and then also the sexual revolution is happening and all this other insanity.
Things get muddled, and
Well,
unfortunately.
Laity are priest, prophet, and king. Some say that has Protestant origins, that idea. That's its own, but I think that there's a way to, I think it's Catholic, because if you look at the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I think it's in like John 14 or something. And 14:3 if I had to guess, but I'm probably wrong. There is a theology there, the way, the truth, the life, right? Like, the way is, his kingship. And
social kingship of Christ, yep.
Yeah, and what you conquer is sin and death. The truth is his prophetic teaching office, and then the life himself is, as a priest, he sacrifices himself so you have life.
Yep, him is the Lamb of God, yep.
Yeah, so it's like, it's a touchy subject for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Ultimately, the conclusion I came to, I don't remember what Pope it was at the time. I believe it was Pope Gregory, but obviously I don't know.
Sure.
But people were writing to him and be like, well, what's going to happen to tradition and all this stuff, and what's going to happen to the church? And his response was just, I am the tradition. I am tradition. Nothing's going to change, because obviously what Jesus said, he said, the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church.
Right.
Obviously, upon this rock I build my church. So he was just like, don't worry about it. I am the tradition. I'm still here. You're fine. Everything's good.
Have you ever heard of sedevacantism?
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the confusion is there too, because there's a bunch of different flavors of that, but a mainline popular one is that there hasn't been a valid pope since Pius XII.
What you're basically Protestant at that point, honestly, because
you heard it here from a man who's been Protestant his life.
That's ultimately like,
that's
if you look at it, that's as a new Catholic, it's like somebody who now I'm just like, all right, whatever the Pope says, all right, let's go. It's like if you say, well, no, it's like, sorry, you're wrong, and
sure, sadly
you've spiritually schismed yourself.
Well,
unfortunately,
I would gently throw into the mix, as a trained theologian, that still got to finish the piece of paper, but trained up in the science of it, that the Pope has universal jurisdiction and authority on matters of faith and morals.
Faith and morals, yep.
So there is some nuance there.
Yeah, I'm not fully like. I know there is some things that need to be met. It's like
if
faith.
He says jump off a cliff, you don't do it.
Yeah. It's like he has to be addressing the church. He has to, in a matter of faith and morals, and then adding to or expanding. I think it is. I don't remember exactly
you're talking about exercising papal authority.
Yeah. Those three requirements need to be met.
The College of Bishops, and everything else. Yeah. But just in general, I like the simplicity with which you're like, listen, I'm just gonna believe what the church has believed for its entire history, and that's good enough for me. Schism's a really interesting thing. St. Thomas Aquinas talks about how there's a verticality to it and there's a horizontal component to it. And this is something that I've noticed in the community that's a concern, and something that we all need to just be aware of is, everyone knows right off the cuff the verticality of it. The verticality of it is what you're describing, right? Like, I'm in union with the Pope because he represents Christ on earth, and that's that. There's also the horizontal component, which is, you don't just need to be in union with the Pope to be Catholic, but you also need to be union with the other people.
With everybody else, yeah. You need to be one
with the Pope. I think we could talk more about that.
Yeah, because Catholic is derived, I believe, from a Greek word that means universal or one.
That's correct.
So
That's
it's one, the one church, and for everyone, universal.
Right. So last thing I guess I would say on that point, is it's some people are going to agree with you and aren't. I'll tell you that right now.
I know. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But and you also, you have your whole life ahead of you to continue to develop these, your understanding and your viewpoint. You have every right to change your views on whatever within the bounds of still being Catholic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There is some nuance. There is some nuance that I do recognize, but
But some say just Latin Mass or die. Some say Novus Ordo's get with the times. Others say let's amalgamate, right? There's a talk about a hermeneutic of continuity and everything, and however it pans out is not my responsibility as a theologian to say what should happen for sure. I have ideas about it for sure. I'm not going to get into it now just so I don't take over the conversation, but my point is, in terms of what I see in the community, it is very wrong to absolutely refuse to worship with other people who are, validly expressing their faith.
Yeah.
Right. For the traditionalists, Novus Ordo hosts have liberated energumen from diabolic extraordinary influence. You cannot say that's not really Jesus.
Yeah.
And if you don't think it is, you are out of line.
It's a big problem.
You're out of line. And for the Novus Ordo people, if you're thinking, oh, I don't like those people over there because they don't know how to get along with everybody else, and if you refuse, if you're gonna invite people to sing with you for one mass, but that you refuse to go to the other mass, how do you think people are gonna take that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but it doesn't mean, oh, we need to shut down the Latin mass.
No.
No, we need to build bridges. We need to be able to have an adult conversation like we're having, and seek to understand, because listen, you don't need to, it should, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, you should be allowed to go to just the Latin Mass or just the Novus Ordo.
Oh, 100%.
If that's what you think in terms of your Western expression, as long as they're both considered legitimate expressions.
As long as they're both valid, yep.
The Western rite. And not have to pass some litmus test that you're going to go to the other one in order to, show that you're a true Catholic. That's not what I mean by you have to have that horizontal communion. What I'm saying is, for either of them to tell each other that it's invalid, you're actually treading towards schism.
Yeah, you're in some deep water with that one. So yeah. Ultimately, I think we just need to follow the church and follow God. Honestly, I leave everything to Him. I've been learning to do that. So
yeah, Philippines 2:8, I think, is a great verse for those who struggle with this. Traditionalist, Novus Ordo people, whatever, that are diehards in their camps. And I mean, it's great to even be that, by the way. I want to say positive things. I mean, I'm talking about my own family here. But, it's better than to just not even care at all, be super liberal and,
yeah,
host and ghost, as they say, grab the host and leave without reflecting for 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I'm just there at Mass for the Eucharist. I'm there for Eucharist, there for Jesus. That's important. That's the only thing that matters at Mass, honestly. So
Philippines 2:8, it's Jesus became obedient even unto death on a cross. The obedience is the most important part. If it even appears for those of us who love the Latin Mass, that it's going to be taken away, be obedient about it.
So be it.
There's going to be a death. He'll find a way to make it good,
Trims off the rest of the dead branches so it can grow anew.
Right, and the mystical body is not greater than the master, right? There has to be the death before the resurrection.
Yeah, if the Latin Mass has to go, there's got to be a reason for it, which it will be a sad day, but something greater will come.
Right.
In the end, something greater will come. So
and there's plenty of Marian apparitions that talk about, the sign from heaven, the rosary, the tools that we'll have to succeed. But Alice, one of the things I know you wanted to touch on today is the Exodus 90 program. It's something we've done for 4 years now, thus far in the Dynamis ministry. You've been with Dynamis this past year. You're a recent convert to the faith. Haven't done it yet. We anticipate setting one up this next season. Why are you so pumped about it?
Well, first of all, I think because I am a new Catholic, I really want to learn more and more about the faith. And since we have such a great group here, I really want to find a way where I can fit in. I guess I don't know if that makes sense. Fit in is probably not the right word to describe it, but I just want to go deeper. And learn more and more. Because obviously I am a new Catholic, so I just want to go deeper. And there's a lot of people here who I know who have done multiple exoduses. I know you have.
Right.
And when you started talking about it, and I hear other people talking about it, it piqued my interest quite a bit. Because I know previously on the podcast with Pat, actually, he said something about it's like penance, and you can almost experience a way that like Jesus when he suffered on the cross. I remember that episode where he said in a way that's almost like sharing in that. So that really piqued my interest, because one of the things I do regularly now, like if I've had a bad day, like at work or whatever it may be, every time I pass a cemetery, because I passed a few cemeteries going to work and back home, I just offer up all my little pains and annoyances from the day or whatever's on my mind, whatever's bugging me. I just offer
that one coworker that you just love.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
To see
we all have one. We don't share, but I just offer that up for them, because obviously they can't pray for themselves. They can pray for us.
Holy souls in purgatory.
Yeah, in purgatory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to pray for them. And that's something, like, even when I was a Protestant, and that's a big thing in Protestantism, is like, you don't really like purgatory. It's like not a thing. Like they don't believe in purgatory, a lot of them. So when I actually found that out, like, oh yeah, you can actually, like, people who are not yet to God and unified with Him, they can't pray for themselves. So it's up to us to help them get there, whether that, however long they may be there, or I think maybe somebody is in there till the end of time. But
that is what Our Lady of Fatima says.
Yeah. But for everyone else, it's up to us to help them. So
could be multiple souls going through that. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I guess the consolation to that is, even though you are in purgatory till the end of time, you still know after everything's done and over with, you'll still be with God in the end. So I guess that's a comforting thing.
It's a great mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, well, another thing you need to be to want to do Exodus is crazy.
I think we all got a little bit of that in us.
Yeah, you'll fit right in. No, I mean, all joking aside, obviously the three pillars are prayer, asceticism, and fraternity. So the asceticisms in particular are everyone's favorite. You know, Brother Pat in episode 8 of this podcast, as you alluded to, thanks for tuning in, by the way.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. You know, he touches on the cold showers, and when you do the cold showers, you know, he's really kind of developed this spirituality around it and has shared it with a bunch of the guys, which has been, you know, a great mentorship opportunity, where you go through the 5 sorrowful mysteries throughout the cold shower. And I won't give away, you know, what he breaks down here. You know, you can tune into
Everybody should tune into that episode. It's a great one.
After this one, we'll say. And so that's really great. But then also, you know, what you ultimately identify are where your pain points are, what you have a hard time letting go of, your attachments. And that's why all those asceticisms are there. Cold showers are just a great way to jolt you into the fact that you're doing something different, right? We are set apart for something different. And that's, you know, wherever those pain points end up being, you're going to be thankful that you have the fraternity, that other pillar, which is so important, right? Meeting every week, because that's how, you know, you get through it. And part of it, you know, as men, we don't like to admit that, you know, we have shortcomings or that, you know, we fail.
Like just bottle everything up.
Yeah, and our pride or whatever it is, you know, it's like the proverbial dad who never asks for directions, like pulls over and just admits that he doesn't know what he's doing. But there's a great, you know, the equalizer of the program is that we're all going through it.
Yeah,
we're all going to fail at some point. So no one here is going to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can all kind of, you know, own up to whatever the shortcoming is, identify it, overcome it through that fraternal aspect.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, when I really want to say when now, because I am very heavily considering doing it.
Nice.
Is that fraternal aspect? That's one thing that's really like drawing me towards it. It's one of the big things that I've been thinking about, and why I might want to do it.
Right.
Is that fraternal aspect, because that's something that I am like yearning for a little bit. It's like a fraternal aspect to like Catholicism, and like meeting people and people my age or like-minded people to share and experience the faith with. So that's one of the things that I've really been drawn to. I don't know much. I haven't heard much about the whole process. Obviously, if I did do it, I'd learn more and learn what we go through in that. But yeah, I'm very heavily considering it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and you know, we actually just released last week an episode where we revealed, the high priest fast, which is one of the unique components of an Exodus 90 that makes it a dynamis Exodus 90, where, we, for those who are medically cleared, we do a specific fasting regimen, which is something that we get into in more detail when we sign on. And some guys are called to do it, some are not. We've done it in different ways over the years. Sometimes it's like anonymous. It really just depends on what each person wants to do given his spiritual state. There's so many opportunities for modesty as well as action, and that's what separates an Exodus that we do. I've heard that there's some frats out there that don't do the weekly meetings. Technically speaking, you're not doing a proper Exodus.
Yeah, isn't that a requirement?
Yeah, it's kind of like doing the rosary, but you're not meditating. You're just saying the prayers. You're not really doing the rosary. You're doing the Psalter at that point. It's good to take up pious exercises where you do asceticisms and where you practice self-denial and mortification. But if you're going to sign on for this program, one of the pillars is the fraternal aspect where you meet weekly. So that's something that you can be assured is going to happen with us. Another thing is we don't just lick our wounds and barely do the asceticisms by week 12, which is the closing week. We're like on it to the point where we're going even deeper. So
try to consistently do everything throughout the whole thing, and if one person falls behind, you try to help them. So
absolutely,
that's what's going on.
That's where the anchors come in week 1.
Holding everybody accountable.
Yeah, within the first week, you assign anchors, and that's basically your accountability partner.
Okay.
So you have someone that you talk to every day, and then you meet with everyone once a week. Okay. And you do these prayers every single day. You follow this. The app has all the different things on it. And then you also do the list of asceticisms, like no unnecessary internet, no TV, no movies, no...
I heard no internet, no sweets and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, there's like food, drink, no alcohol.
That shouldn't be a problem for me.
Yeah, no doubt, no question. And also... just a bunch of opportunities for self-denial. And so you fill yourself with the prayer, because you don't just want, nature pours a vacuum again. So you don't just take stuff away. Like if that's your mentality going in, then you're probably not doing it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Got to put the good things in, take the bad stuff out, fill in with good things.
That's it, to set yourself up for success, right? And when you're doing that much, we've mostly met on Fridays. It turns out it's not so hard to do when you're not allowed to go out for movie night or whatever else people might do on a Friday. It works out well, but every year the group decides what's going to work for everybody. And that's the name of the game, and you go much deeper. And another thing that we have going for us as well is a lot of the guys typically have known each other from Dynamis for the rest of the year and going into the frat. And then certainly by the time it's over, we stay in touch. So you always have, you kind of have an accountability partner for the long haul.
Gotcha. Just going in, knowing people, coming in, having a deeper connection to a friend that you didn't have that connection with beforehand.
Usually. Yeah, especially if your anchor is someone you haven't, grown closer with. And, really, really incredible things happen. Mm-hmm. We've seen, people take on extraordinary cold showers. Of course, we live in the Western New York region, couched between 2 lakes, and it snows a lot. So the water gets down to the 40s.
Yeah.
That's another thing. We're there for, don't be a hero. Don't do something stupid. You also, you have each other's back. You ease into it, like anything. But with time, you can actually take on the cold showers, even in a climate like ours. It's, definitely not the same experience as in Florida.
Yeah, just got to slowly get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to somebody who had done Exodus before, and he said he went down, in Florida, he did something where it was a little warmer in the climate. I don't remember what state he went to. It was like a warm climate like Florida. And instead of doing a cold shower, he did a hot shower instead. Because he did it in Exodus. So instead of doing a cold shower, because I don't remember what state he went to. But he said the cold shower wasn't doing it, so he said he flipped it and did a hot shower instead.
Penance.
Yeah, he did a hot shower instead of a cold shower for a penance.
Nice.
Which I thought that's quick thinking. That's good. Good idea.
Yeah.
If the cold shower's not working, do a hot shower instead.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I mean, I do that. I don't do cold showers, but I only do hot water when I take a shower. So
you'll love the cold shower.
It'd be a change of pace for me. So
no question. And one of the things that really makes it enjoyable as well is the first few weeks you essentially build like a brain trust together, because the guys come together and it's like delineating the rules in football. It's why especially guys often tend to love football. It's like the line is here, when you're on this side it means this, and when you're on this side it means that. Very logical. And the guys break down like, okay, what does no sweets mean? Some years I've seen the leader of the group allow for honey, other times not. Sometimes it's a concession. Only make sure you do a teaspoon a day. Like you delineate these rules, and it's all based on what everybody comes to an agreement with, wherever there's wiggle room. So I could see someone, like for example, someone had a skin condition one year. It genuinely was not medically smart for them to do the cold showers. We came up with, an alternate for them.
An alternate?
Yeah. So, that's just organically develops that camaraderie over time when everyone's kind of converging together on a mission, So
interesting.
That'll be good.
I'll have to give it some more thought, but obviously I am leaning in towards that direction quite a bit already. So just gotta make the decision when time comes.
Right? Yeah. Months. January 1st, 2024. Our fifth season. It'll be the earliest that it starts. It's happened to be in, I think, January every single time. Easter happens to be 90 days, after whenever the start date is. So it's a movable feast. But it'll be New Year's this year. So people will be able to enjoy themselves on New Year's Eve, and then boom, we're in it.
No more.
Solemnity of Mary, baby.
Better get it in the New Year's Eve party, and then next day you're going straight into it.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So it'll be here before we know it. But as we know, we're on the verge of November, All Souls Month, and I think it's great that you mentioned, the importance of offering it up for others. It's a great opportunity to get in that mindset as we go into fall and winter to purge and mortify and offer up. So, Exodus will definitely get you on the right track for that.
Yeah. I'm almost there. I'm thinking I wanted to know a little more and learn like what it's about and stuff, because I'm almost there. So I think me learning about basically how everything goes on and in more detail. I think I'll probably end up doing it is more than likely what's going to happen. So
I remember one of the first years when I was gathering everybody for the frat. It didn't hit me. It was a Sunday. Exodus started that Monday. Next day.
Oh boy.
Called up a bunch of people. Had a healthy frat of I think 8 or so within the day.
That's pretty
good. Guys were, there was something. That year was the year where it was just like, don't psych yourself out. Just say yes. Let your yes be yes. Right? And be no, and
no maybes, yes or no.
That year went, I mean, every year has been incredible, but every year has its own unique flavor in terms of, what everybody gets out of it. You also start with a why. What is your why for doing it? It's important to crystallize that, and, that gets doled out in week 1, and then it's a good thing to drag back out as you go through the process and continue to purge yourself of all of these attachments. So, we'll see how it goes this year. Now that we have, it's, I guess in a sense we're talking about it before it's happening. This promoting of it means that who knows who might join the frat. Yeah. Invite some friends. Get the word out there.
I will try.
Yeah. Whoever you want to. Unless you don't want to do it with them. I mean, maybe you're like, that's not. I'm ready to play video games with these guys, but not play video games and get to know them. And no, I don't know. I don't. Yeah. But it's gonna be good. And so tell me a little bit about your aspirations moving forward. Do you feel called to the religious life? Are you thinking about marital vocation?
I've given some serious thought to everything, like all the way down to like staying celibate for the rest of my life. Because I think if you took like a lineup of like 100 people, I think maybe 90 people out of that 100 people are called to marriage, and then say like 7 or 8 of them are called to be priests. Maybe 2 or 3 of them are called to just stay celibate and be like a monk or something.
Sure. Hermit.
Or a hermit. Take a vow of silence or something.
Or a monk, yeah.
Yeah. But generally, I'm kind of in that like weird spot right now where I don't really know what God wants me to do. I have considered all the options, so just kind of go off and try one. See if it works out. So, I mean, I would like to get married and have kids because I feel like I'd be a great dad, and I like kids. I do like spending time with cousins and siblings and stuff, and young children. It reminds me of when I was a kid. That's ultimately what it is. It reminds me of just the joy that kids get from just the simplest of things,
Totally.
like peekaboo, and then like babies. So I would like to have kids, but if that's not what's for me, then
You're open to it.
yeah. I'm open to all options.
Any man worth his salt
Has considered the priesthood.
Yep. You've heard it, right?
Yep, I've heard it. I've definitely heard it.
It's out there.
Yep.
And I remember the first time someone said it to me, but it was actually in Washington, D.C. when we were doing March for Life. So there you go. But okay, let's talk about the marital vocation then.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it would take to, to raise good Catholic children?
I think I kind of subscribe to like the peaceful parenting idea. Trying not to like attribute your trauma to your kids and trying to raise them in the best way that you can. In obviously being Catholic, so you can plant those seeds so ultimately they can get to heaven, because that's ultimately what it is.
Yes.
If I were to be a father, that's ultimately what I am. I'd be like Christ in that way, where I'd be a shepherd of my flock, and I'd have to guide them to where they need to go. But obviously let God handle everything. But if I'm just that shepherd to guide them in that way, then that would be it. That's kind of a father's role.
Yeah, I mean, as a practicing Thomist, I think about what you just said, right? Don't impose your traumas on the next of kin. It's important to recognize that up until they are about age 7, that's when they reach the age of reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's normally when they can receive communion in the current practice of the Church in the West. And the name of the game from birth is you're basically like imprinting on them like an image of yourself in a certain sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they are part of you in a way, like
Totally.
like genetically, they're half you.
Absolutely, and they absorb like a sponge.
Oh,
your
yeah.
mannerisms, your everything. So it's so important to be on your A game right from the get-go, to the best that you can. Of course, I mean, we're human, we're flawed, but from a Thomistic perspective, there's the cogitative power in the body, which is this like judgment center that you need to properly train, and then there's making rational judgment, with like intellection, and when you reach the age of reason, that kicks in. Like it's that's the point where they're like responsible for their decisions. They can go to confession.
They understand what they
did
wrong,
and if you did something wrong. And hopefully we could be like the saints that were like never committed mortal sin their entire lives, and maybe even venial sins. I'm sure they've existed. We know they've existed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of course, Blessed Mother, probably Saint Joseph and Saint John the Baptist, whomever.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, up until they reach 7, it's that cogitative power. It's basically like the pain pleasure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it says in the Bible, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think a lot of people take that out of context a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like that's in like what I said in like a shepherd here, because Jesus, we should strive to be like Jesus ultimately.
Yes.
He was the pinnacle of what it is to be a man. So he was firm, but he didn't. He wasn't like abusive.
Yes.
So in that way he was a shepherd, and in the same way shepherds they use their rod. They don't hit their sheep, obviously. Like if you hit your sheep, your sheep are going to be scared of you, and they're going to run away from you if you approach them. So they are physical with it, but they use it to just push them in that direction. So the rod is like metaphorically you as a father would be leading them in that direction and guiding them through hopefully peaceful means, and
there's a lot
which
of
is
ways
what I
to
would
do
say.
that psychologically.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot in the last century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ultimately there are ways that you can be, I guess, abusive in a way with psychologically, like if you would withhold attention from a child, which I think neglect is terrible. Like you shouldn't neglect your child. I think you should give your kids hugs as many times as you can every day. I think you should hug your kids like twice a day if you could, at the bare minimum.
Way more than that.
Oh yeah.
for me anyways, as a dad.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. And it's you obviously been giving this some thought. I'm remembering a conversation we had recently offline where we kind of got into like, what Catholic dating or courting would look like. And, I was really impressed by something that you said, because this wasn't even on my radar by your age. My conversion came later in life, and I commend you for whatever instinct you had, whatever, clicked for you. And then obviously, ultimately, all glory to God for him putting something on your heart. What are your thoughts on that? And how did you come to this?
Well, in this day and age, I think people push, like, if you're going to get married, they push it a little bit off a little bit too much. So ideally, in a Catholic society, I think about the age we start thinking about this sort of thing. So like teenage years, I feel like that's when we should really get married. Like for women, I think it should be around the age of like 16 to 20. And then for men can push it off just a little bit for like 18 to 25. And now you necessarily don't have to have big families, but you should. That's, I feel like, when you should start having kids, because there's a whole host of issues that happen when you push child rearing to a later date. Like you see it nowadays, women who have no kids in their late 30s or in their early 40s, they get really depressed, and same with guys too. So ultimately, I think the reason why you want to have kids early is because you want to not steal your time from your children and your grandchildren away from them. It's just like inflation. You're stealing basically from the next generation. And I thought about it as if I was a kid. Now my parents did have kids fairly young, in their early 20s. So I've had a lot of time with my parents and whatnot. But back to the death of my grandfather, you want to have as much time with your kids and grandkids as you can. So ultimately, it is selfish in a way. So if you delay child rearing in your best years, people say it's like, well, I want to live my best years for me. It's like, well, they're called your best years for a reason. So they're the best years for like everything, peak fitness, peak child rearing, and everything. So ultimately, that's how I feel. Like, it's basically stealing from the next generation. And a lot of things happen, like resentment and anger about that, because
there's a lot of studies for that, because nowadays we need to create studies for everything to improve common sense. And I'm oppressed anew that you're saying this, because it is. I did end up doing it later in life because I wasn't given the right tools to succeed early on in my life. I'm definitely not going to get into that today, but it's having children destroys selfishness.
Yeah, and it makes you an adult too.
It really selfless. You have someone else.
You're responsible for somebody at the end of the day.
Do that. You will become the fullest version of yourself. You will realize what life has to offer. And obviously, from a Christian Catholic perspective, it's like, death to self is the whole name of the game.
That's what love is ultimately. That's what Jesus did. He sacrificed himself for me. For me, like, you really got to think about that. He sacrificed himself for me, for everything for everybody, for everything that I've done. He was willing to do that in an ultimate self-sacrificial way.
Praise God. And that's ultimately what we're doing. I've been reflecting on that a ton lately, like the importance of treating your spouse like as a man, right? Like as the bride, the church, Christ, treating his church. Like, what does that actually look like day in and day out? You know, like we learn in pre-K, and almost every day you're probably going to end up saying, like, I'm sorry, thank you, and I love you. It's like, like the sorry is like your own little family confession. And, thank you. It's like, thank you for forgiving me. And I love you, right? Like, will you marry me? It's like you're renewing your wedding vows every day. It's an incredible process. Yeah. If you would want to talk about studies too, about the whole child rearing thing too. Yeah, what do you got?
Later on, that's one of the reasons why I feel like people should have kids younger too, is if you delay, say you haven't had a kid and you're a woman, you're 38 or 35 to say 38, the chances of you getting pregnant are actually they're like 2 or 3 times lower than it would be if you were, like, say 20 or in your early 20s or even like 18. And the mutational load, like, gets super sciencey. The chance of having like a genetic defect or a mental illness skyrocket after the age of 30 or 35. So and the chances of you actually having kids, if you're a woman, you've gotten pregnant, say at 21, your chances of getting pregnant again are actually, they increase until you're 30, and obviously you start dropping off then. The same with men too, but the chances of you having another child, and if it was a healthy child the first time, then the chances of it being a healthy child after that stay more consistent at that point. And that's ultimately raising kids. That's what you want to do. You want to have happy, healthy children so they raise up and be functioning members of society ultimately, so they don't have trauma, and they don't have ultimately the devil. So the devil doesn't have like a foothold in them, like something that they can get in there and drag them down, because you want to have them as clean as possible so you can get them to heaven, or so they can get to heaven. Ultimately, which is what it's all about.
100%. And of course, our hearts go out to, you know, women who desire that, who do long for that, and for whatever reason, the circumstances in their life, you know, they're still searching in their 30s or whatever. But I think this is especially an important wake-up call for anyone who might actually happen to be tuning into a program like this and didn't give it enough thought.
Yeah.
Early enough on, you know.
Yeah.
There's a penitential component to that it's going to be there. I mean, we're talking about nature here. Yeah. You can't fight nature.
Nope, you can't fight biology.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can try, but you won't win. And, you know, one thing I can say, you know, well, two things come to mind. The first ever men's night, I'll let you in on some history here. The first ever men's night in Dynamis, you know, I specifically pedagogically picked, you know, How to Raise a Man video by Father Chadwick.
Okay.
And now my priest, and as you well know. And I did it because it is like shear the wool off the sheep. Like, you're not a man.
Get down to the meat and potatoes of it.
Yes, and it's literally like, you know, I was like, because I've seen a lot in ministry even before developing, you know, these new programs that, you know, it's like therapeutic Christianity. Like, I'm okay, you're okay, we're gonna be okay. You know, I'm borrowing from a professor that I've learned from with that one, and you know, this video is like, listen, up until a couple decades ago, if you weren't able to put a roof over a woman as a man, if you weren't able to put a roof over a woman and care for her by the time you turned 18, there was generally considered to be something wrong with you. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, or at least if you didn't have the ability to do it. Like if you weren't projected to, like if you're not projected to be able to do that, then something's going on.
Yeah, and I literally, I was like, you know, I talked to the other co-founder, Jake, who helped me get this ministry going. And I was like, listen, man, one of two things are going to happen. This is either going to hit home and we're going to have something here with like a ministry that will continue to develop, or everyone's just going to be like, this is so horrific. I want to go back to Word on Fire or whatever else they were doing. And that's that. And here we are, completing 6 years of men's nights without missing a beat ever. And, you know, it's incredible. You know, I mean, the only, just to be super clear, the only like hiatus was the birth of my third son for like a couple weeks. Like, that's it. And obviously no one dinged us for that. It's like, yeah, you know, complete your primary duties in your state in life, right? But we've been blessed. We've got the healthy children. And, you know, so I would just say the other side of that coin with what you're saying is, you know, we live in a post-Obamacare world. You know, like 26, you're on your parents' insurance until you get off of it. Like it's kind of just ingrained in the system that everything's been delayed.
Yeah, it's all delayed. Like, it's, in my opinion, it's how it was ultimately better, because you see people were normal functioning by the time they were 20. They could take care of themselves and a family. And that's been taken away. And ultimately, I think that's been taken away from especially men, because they want to do that. Like, I feel like if I provide for something, say, like I do something for my brother or one of my brothers or sibling, I'm not even their dad, but I am their older brother or their brother, and I'm doing something for them. So ultimately, it's not even my kid at that point, but it is still family. So ultimately, I feel something great about that, even though it's, at that point, it's not even a family. Well, it is family, but it's not like your children. Right. So I can't imagine what it would feel like if you did that same thing for a child. So, and it's great fulfillment for most people now men don't have to. They can be fulfilled in other ways. They don't have to have a family. That's the one unique thing about men.
Just like women can become religious, but they still have spiritual motherhood.
Yeah. I think motherhood for women is, you really can't, that they only have like that option, like spiritual or if like actual motherhood. Like you can't really have much in between because they just feel lost without it. Like
Well,
you see that.
That says that women become miserable, but not to be controversial or anything.
No,
but
it's just that's just my observations. Like men can do other things and not have kids and be fulfilled, but generally most people, I say like 90% of people, should get married, I feel like, and have kids, because that's, loving for somebody is greatest fulfillment most people feel.
How do you feel about like dog children?
Dog children? Oh, I'm a parent and I have 2 fish and a dog. That's not even close to the same thing. Like it's too easy.
It's a beautiful thing to care about God's creation and to get fulfillment from that. But yeah. I mean, there's no equivocaing there. You know, the level of responsibility and the gratitude and the sanctification. G.K. Chesterton touches on that. He says, you know, when you got a society where people treat their animals like kids but they won't have kids, is actually a sign of a society in decline, because it's irrational.
It's sad when I see that nowadays, where I see women who have, as obviously as Catholics we don't believe in birth control, obviously. So women who've been on birth control for 20 years and they're in their early 40s and they have a dog, and I feel empathy for them, honestly. That's really what they need, because they missed out on having kids, which is a great joy in life. And you can't really feel anything else but empathy for them, because now obviously we have to, as Catholics especially, we have to stay strong and be like, well, this is how it is. You made your bed, now you gotta lay in it. So,
well, it's a failure of the men.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
I mean, this goes back to Adam and Eve. You know, Eve committed 5 sins. Adam committed 8. He committed all the ones Eve did plus more, because he was supposed to be responsible. So yeah, it's not a failure of the woman at the end of the day. It's a failure. It's a failure of masculinity.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
100%. And you know, it's even just physiologically, right? You can't defeat nature. You can't beat it. You know, they've shown that when women, you know, cohabit and they are on contraceptives, they tend to get a beta male. And then, let's say for whatever reason they do want to get off of it. We're not even talking about whether someone's left-leaning, right-leaning, or whatever. It's an apolitical conversation. But whatever circumstance they're in, they're like, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's have the kids. When she gets off that contraception, her hormones change.
Completely change,
start to get back to normal. And generally she's not going to like respect that same kind of a guy that would allow her to do that. Not that, you know, allow like, you got to do what I say, like chauvinism, but like that the both of them came together and agreed that was somehow okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's one of the reasons why I feel like you should have kids young too, is because if you don't, then you get into that situation where we're living together for 10 years and ultimately leading people to morally sin in a lot of instances, which leads people to hell, which is the worst thing that can happen.
Of course.
Yeah, and that happens a lot of the time, and you see it all the time nowadays, where people cohabitate for 20 years and now they're married finally after 13, but we've been living together for 20 years and now we don't have any kids, unfortunately, and it leads to a lot of sorrow, which I can't feel anything but empathy for people like that.
Right. Well, whatever God's will is for you in the future, I'm excited to see it. You know, for how long God keeps us in each other's lives. Of course, you know, we've got your back in the ministry, and you know, and it's a gift that, you know, that you understand these things, and that you've been brought to the fold, that you brought to Jesus Christ's church, right? The Catholic Church. We didn't even touch on it at the beginning, but we believe in it, not just because, you know, the Pope is a representative of Christ, but because it is the church founded by Christ. Even if you ask like Google, Alexa, whatever assistants, they say that.
Yep.
Like, who founded the Catholic Church? Jesus Christ.
Yep.
That's why we're here.
That's why I wanted to be Catholic. I was like, I want to be a part of the church that Jesus made, not the church that Mark the pastor down the road made.
Not some white dude from no. I'm just,
Gym shorts, tattoo on the calf, and sports jersey.
nailed it. So
Pastor Jeff from down the street.
yes. But seriously, I want to thank you again for being involved in the life of the ministry, and most importantly for saying yes to our Lord, for joining the team, you know, the Catholic faith.
Yep.
And
Glad to be along for the ride.
100%, man. And of course, I pray that God abundantly bless you and make you into a really great saint. And I look forward to doing God's work together as we continue to commune in ministry.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And if you enjoy content like this, exhort you to hit the subscribe button. But then also, we talked about Brother Pat's episode. You can check out the penance of Exodus through the cold showers that he talks about, and so much more about mentorship. And we can also break into the High Priest Fast if you want to check out this episode as well. Thank you so much for supporting us, and God bless you.